Welcome back, spectators. Jesus and I sincerely hope you enjoyed last week's giant-sized New Year's special, because we had a blast putting it together. That said, the holidays are over, the festivities are done, and we're getting back to our collecting roots with a new collector Grail tale with YouTube collecting celeb, Swagglehaus Comics. So stuff the monkey meat in the freezer and avoid any Decepticons with a runny nose. This is episode 26.
This is a conspiracy. That's what this is.
Just begging to course its way through your veins.
Let's just for a moment speculate, shall we?
You're into comic books, aren't you?
I'm a nerd.
But you do like comic books.
Comic books aren't just for sad nerds anymore.
You think we need one more?
Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
You think we need one more?
Objection, calls for speculation, move to strike.
This is a bad idea. This is a bad idea.
All right, we'll get one more.
Spectators, a comic book podcast with Jake and Jesus.
Hello and welcome back, spectators, to the latest episode of Spectales, a comic book podcast that asks collectors and creators, what's your Grail tale? We focus on telling stories and collecting those Grail books and how comics have shaped our lives. We also lean into comic speculation and how to help the hobby pay for itself. We're your hosts, Jake and Jesus. Jesus, how's it going?
It's going great, man. I'm really excited about this. We haven't recorded since last year. So I'm really excited to get back to it.
It has been a little while. And the last time we recorded, we were making the giant-sized New Year's special. If you're listening to this episode and the date on your calendar says January 12th, which is the release date of this episode, then you are in luck. You still have time to go back, listen to the giant-sized New Year's special, and enter our listener giveaway. You have until 12:59 p.m. January 12th, that's Central Standard Time, because Jesus and I live in the Central Standard Time Zone, to send your message with the secret word to our Instagram or Twitter account. If you are listening after the 12th, I'm sorry to say you missed this one, but we're going to do more giveaways in the future, so stay tuned for more good stuff. So, man, the giveaway, the giant-size episode, it's kind of just exploded, huh, Jesus?
Yeah, man. I was going to say, if you miss this one, that's okay. Just wait for the omnibus episode. It's going to be 8 hours long. We're going to intersperse different words throughout the whole 8 hours. But you'll have a chance for sure.
Oh, man, I'm going to need a pinch hitter if we're going to have an omnibus episode, though. We're going to have to get some variant Jakes in here to pick up something.
No, but it's good, man. Yeah, the episode's doing phenomenal, man. I'm really excited about it. I was really happy to see it do well. The entries as well coming in is really exciting. We get to give back to the community, which is something we've always wanted to do. So it's just overall, it's been great. Yeah,
and I think the most important thing is that people have really enjoyed it, and I want to thank everybody who listened to that episode and came back for another one. If that was your first experience, this episode is going to be back on our regular, I guess, segmentation. So it's going to be maybe unique to you if you didn't go back and listen to some of the older episodes. But thanks for coming back and stick around. So for episode 26, we had to follow up that giant size 6-guest episode with the most amazing guests that we could find. And I think we've done it. I think that we have something that's going to blow everybody away. You know him as Swagglehaus Comics. He's on YouTube. He's on Instagram. He is filling the world with comic information just because he loves comics. Swagglehaus, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Glad to be here.
It's our pleasure. It's going to be a lot of fun. So let's talk real quick about your YouTube content. Well, first of all, Swagglehaus Comics is where everybody can find you on YouTube and Instagram if they just search that. But what, I guess we'll start with the easy question. What prompted you to jump on YouTube?
Yeah, I guess it's like a few different chain of events that kind of led me to wanting to be on YouTube. And we actually were kind of, or Jesus was kind of asking about, what did you, I have this, if you guys have seen any of my videos, I have this little statue behind me, right? And he was asking about where it came from. And for those who know me outside of Swagglehaus, I work in film and TV and stuff. And I write and I direct and things like that. And so during COVID lockdown and that pandemic, everything, shut down. Obviously, a lot of industry shut down, but especially one that was knocked pretty hard was the film industry here in Southern California, where I live. So there was going to be like no productions for quite a while. So it was me, doing some writing, doing some work, and then I had always had some interest in wanting to do kind of YouTube content, and I had thought at a time prior that I would do like more of like a filmmaking type of YouTube or talk about some of the things I do in my work life, but I kind of wanted to keep it separate. It's like I already do all this stuff here. Let me have do something a little more fun that I'm interested in on the YouTube space, and obviously big into comic books. So that's kind of when I decided, hey, let me make some YouTube comic book videos and things like that. And it took me a little bit of time to really want to jump into it, because as you're making stuff, and as you guys know, because you guys run this podcast, when you kind of put yourself out there, you're always a little bit hesitant, right? And it's like, who am I? What do I know? Why should anyone listen to what I have to say? So that was kind of
asks himself that all the time, by the way.
Totally.
all the time, Jake.
Yeah, but you guys do have good things to say, and there's a lot of people I think out there that have great things to say, and so that was kind of with those things happening and having time on my hands during COVID lockdown, that was kind of what really started the channel, and then having that courage to put myself out there is where it all began.
Which is very cool. And I want to just say for everybody out there listening, and I'm assuming a lot of them probably already know you. You have a great subscriber list on YouTube, and you get a lot of great views. And I think that really stems from the fact that when you do a video, it's incredibly engaging, right? You give out a lot of good information, and it also includes a lot of your opinion, which I understand, everybody's opinion is valid in their own right. I just happen to feel that your opinion is always somehow just pointed, you're using the right compass, it feels like, right? And you're using I guess the reason I think that is you're using a lot of information to guide your future purchases or thoughts on speculation. And I think that's a big reason behind it. Is there a reason? I mean, do you feel like there is a responsibility when you are going out and saying, oh, I think this is a spec book, or I think this is a forget it book, or I think this is a collect book kind of thing? What kind of responsibility do you feel like you have as a YouTuber with so many followers to give that kind of information?
Yeah, it's a great question. And like one that I think I continually think about as I make videos or as I get maybe more subscribers and things like that. Well, thank you. Going back first, thank you for saying all those nice things about my YouTube. It's very nice to hear you say that. But I think when I started, it was for me, like with the content, it's just about sort of effectively what the YouTube is essentially a collecting blog, or it's like my collecting blog, but like I'm trying to provide some kind of value back to people. So if I'm just going to show people on a video, hey, here's a bunch of books that I got. Well, it's like, well, what is interesting about that to someone who's watching, other than to say, hey, nice pickup, Swag. Like, so to me, it's like, okay, well, how can I frame this in a way that it might be interesting for collectors, or might be helpful for someone, whether that is explaining why I picked up a book, because maybe there's some speculative value in it, or maybe there's, some kind of investment angle that I'm going for with picking it up, or it's me just trying to, just share, my thought of why I decided to pick up this book, or what was my approach to getting my hands on this thing. So that's where, the ideas of the content, or that's usually how I try to frame my videos. Now, with regards to what you were saying about like, when I'm talking about investment stuff or spec stuff, there is a little bit of a responsibility for sure, because it freaked me out a lot. Like once I got to a certain level where I made one of those videos, I was like, here's top 5, I don't know, insert whatever book that you could pick up that might get hot. And I happened to notice that as I was watching those books on eBay, all of a sudden they all got bought after I posted that video. And that was like really shocking, that all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, like people who are watching this stuff actually like listened to what I had to say and bought these books. And so all of a sudden that got me thinking of, okay, I have to be really careful with how I frame what books I'm talking about. So as I do more and more spec stuff, to me, what I'm just trying to do is to frame the books that I get as like, here's what I'm specing on. So, if you want to buy this thing with me and we want to be stupid together and get this book, like we can do that. And as opposed to like, hey, get these books now and stuff. And I don't know. I mean, I don't really have a good answer for that. It is just something that I sort of always think about. And I just, as I talk about books to invest in or those types of things, I'm just careful with my words, I guess, is maybe how I want to be with it, and just try to frame it so that people understand that this is why I think the fundamentals of this book are good, but please use your own discretion.
All right. Well, not to break up what is already a fascinating conversation, and I think we'll just continue it, but to keep the show rolling, let's roll into our first segment. So, Swags, I'm not sure if you're completely familiar. I'm going to give you a quick rundown of how we generally run the show, unless it's a giant size episode. We always start off with a recent pickup, which can be either a recent spec or just a book that you recently got, or it can be something you recently read that you want to chat about. Then we will roll into Comic Book Grail Tale, which we're going to hand the mic over to you. Jesus and I are just going to put our feet up. We're going to relax, and we're going to let you entertain us with a Grail tale of your own. And then we will close out the show with speculation. We will all throw out one spec book to kind of go out on a high note. So that's where we're at. So we're going to kick this thing off with the first segment, recent pickups. Jesus, I'll let you do the honors.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Appreciate it. Feels good to be doing this too, since we didn't get a chance to do it last time. But I picked up something recently from a friend of the show, Tony Fleece, Stray Dogs, Dog Days #1. I hadn't picked it up yet. I'm going to read this book. This is I love Stray Dogs, the first 5 issues. I enjoyed it a lot. Something different. We had him on. We were able to pick his brain a little bit about it. And I just picked it up. So this is my recent pickup. On top of that, there's so many variant covers.
Just ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. I feel in the best of ways.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's so many cool ones. There's got to be some that you look at and it talks to you and it says, "Hey, pick me up." So I still haven't seen all of them. And I think I actually saw a new one that came out or that's coming out recently that's limited to like 250 or 500. That I was like, oh man, that might be cool. But yeah, some of the new variants I'm looking into possibly getting. Just because they're so cool, man. They're so cool. And maybe they'll pop out, maybe they won't, but they're just, I mean, it's so nostalgic, man. The movie cover homages are just really cool to me.
Did you happen to see Tony Fleece tweeted, somebody took a photo with like 20 of there were like 20 variant covers all in one photo, and he retweeted it or tweeted it. And it's incredible how many they did. But the Stray Dogs and they sort of hit the zeitgeist in a way as far as with those covers, because they basically everybody seemed to accept the fact that they could do the homage covers to the horror movies and the horror TV shows and nobody else could, right? Like, cause you could do it for a different series, but it just wouldn't feel the same. And some reason, the Stray Dogs, it just feels in line. So
yeah, the Stray Dogs, it's funny. It's like it's almost nostalgia on top of nostalgia. They're hitting these like old school movies, and I feel like a lot of collectors already have like a this beloved nostalgia for collecting in and of itself. So when you get like these movie covers on top of the comic books, it's like the perfect storm. But Stray Dogs is one that I feel like I kind of like missed that initial boat. And then when you know how you always, there's those series where you always feel like, oh, I missed out. So I'm just like, whatever, I'm going to pass this one. And then every week you feel like even worse and worse for not hopping on. That's the one where I just like, it's like, great. Like, I just know 2 months from now, I'm going to be obsessed with this and be, buying them at whatever price they are.
There's so many good ones.
Yeah. I think, the Stray Dogs and the nostalgia and the zeitgeist that you mentioned, there's so many layers, right? Like I felt like some of them were, I think I've seen this before. I'm not, where they said, it's like, does anybody know this cover? Like what the homage is? Like they're deep tracks basically. And then they're like, oh, now I got to go back and watch that movie
or, yeah.
because
Right.
they're like, why is this one so popular? Like, you don't know that movie? That's a scary movie from the 80s. It's okay, now I gotta go back and watch. So it's just there's so many layers to it, man. It's so cool. I really enjoy them. So that's what I picked up. That's my recent pickup, and I'm gonna be looking for some of those variants.
Nice. Yeah, great pickup. All right, Swags, what you got?
Yeah. So I got a few books like over, we're just coming off of New Year's, and I was up visiting my family who's in the Bay Area. So I always got to hit up, my shops up there whenever I get a chance. And one book I got is this one behind me, which is the Avengers 196 First Taskmaster.
Nice.
And that's a book. I was really excited to find it. And that's one that I felt like I got it at a really good price. And it's crazy to me because talk about movies having effects on books. And sometimes movies can have the negative effect on a book. And that's one that I think is really interesting to talk about because I feel like the price for it has fallen so far down that I think if you even look at some of the graded prices of it, it's cheaper now than it was even 3 years ago, right? Where even before people thought Taskmaster would be in Black Widow. So it's really interesting to me, and it's funny how the book has almost been tarnished, but like nothing changes the fact that it's still kind of a cool book to have.
Oh, it's an incredibly great cover. The cover, the character, that's a George Perez cover, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is actually. So it's fun. It's just funny how that happens. And I was excited to get it. I think this is, if you're someone who wants the book, this what better time to get it than right now when it's become so scarlet lettered almost.
Yeah, I mean that's a great way to put it, man. Because I feel, and I've had conversations with some collectors that they felt that the character was done wrong in the movie because it didn't really have anything to do with the comics.
Sure.
But I've been a Taskmaster fan because, one of my favorite video games is Marvel vs. Capcom, and he comes out in it, and you can copy other moves and stuff like that with that character. So I just thought it was really cool. Like, you get the best of both worlds. Plus, he just looks cool. He's a skull. I guess I have a thing with skulls because I like Ghost Rider too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it went down. It's depressed, if you will. But I also think, and this is always a weird thing to talk about, or recently a weird thing to talk about, but like, now with the George Perez situation going on and him having a final CGC signing event in January, I think that's a book that if you want to get it signed, that'd be a great book to get signed because that's a great character.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I agree. I love the book. I also think that it's kind of a low key, like pick up now kind of book because it could bump up again at some point.
I agree. I mean, I definitely, I think I understand people didn't love the portrayal, and that's totally fine if you didn't like the characterization. But in some way, shape, or form, I think we're going to get Taskmaster again, and people will get excited about the book again. And we never thought we'd get the quote unquote the real Mandarin ever again, and we did. So there's nothing to say that they don't do the Tony Masters version of Taskmaster one day.
Well, and if you ask me, that book, that cover, that character is bigger than the MCU, right? There's a lot of characters that are bigger than the MCU. They are collectible regardless of if they are in or out. And I think that character belongs in that category, especially with that cover and that first appearance. It's epic. So
for sure.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and say what my pickup was. This is Monkey Meat #1. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with this book. It just came out this last Wednesday. The artwork is just mesmerizing, right? Like, I opened it up to an advertising page for you guys, but it's incredibly unique. It is by Junie Ba. Wow. Junie Ba is the artist, and it is said to be a new thrilling anthology. So this is an image book, and it is released with special authorization from the Monkey Meat Company. So
nice.
I gotta say, it's a little confusing without context, I suppose, and I don't have a lot of context for it to give you guys. But to me, it feels. I mean, I don't necessarily know if this was originally created in the United States or in English. To be honest, I think that this is I think this was created somewhere in Asia. And it was translated to English, is what my gut is telling me. The artwork, everything sort of feels like that. It was just on the shelf. This was not something I had on a pull list. I always look over the new stuff, and I always look for the weirdest thing on the shelf. This one was immediately the weirdest thing I saw. And I went up and I asked my LCS owner, I asked him if he knew anything about it. He goes, I just know it's a weird book, dude. And I was like, all right, I'm in. So,
you had me at weird.
Yeah.
So, but I did read it, and I'm intrigued to see where it goes. I would like to know more about the artist, Junie Ba. I don't know a lot. I should have done a lot more research before coming onto the mic and saying I recommend the book. But you know what? We're here. I don't have the research, and I'm recommending it anyway. So maybe I'll follow up next week.
Yeah.
Well, that's great though. I mean, I love kind of just, you just grabbing something off the shelf just because you're sort of drawn to it, and then if it passes that first like test of, hey, like I'm interested to at least get the next issue. Yes. I think that's a win for sure.
Incredible.
It
definitely gets you there. You know what this reminded me of, Jesus? It reminded me not in the same way, but the first time I picked up Ultra Mega, which I loved in 2001. That was my favorite read of the year.
2001 or
2021. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. That was a long time ago. But I remember seeing that on the shelf saying, man, this looks kind of messed up, flipping through it going, oh, this is a really weird book. I'm going to pick this up. And I loved that book. Now, I didn't love Monkey Meat as much as I loved the first Ultra Mega, but boy, this was still a really good read, really intriguing. A lot of questions. Like, I don't know everything that's going on, but it like pulls you in anyway. So it's worth the $3.99. I don't know if this was flying off the shelves last week or not. I picked it up. It was pretty easy to get. And if it's still in your local shop when you go in for this next Wednesday's poll list, I recommend picking it up, giving it a read.
Awesome. I'm definitely going to pick it up now.
Yeah, I like I said, I think it's well worth it. I don't know if it's a spec book by any means, but if you're interested in a good read that's kind of funky, the art is alone worth it. That's for sure. Yeah. So
the art looks pretty cool, just from what you're holding up.
Yeah. It's got almost like a street art look to it.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's go ahead and Jesus, let's kick our feet up because Swags, I'm sure I don't know what he's got, but I'm sure he's got the most entertaining story we've heard this year so far.
Oh boy. Well, I don't know what to tell you other than to do my best here. So
no pressure.
Let's see how fun I can make this. Okay. Let's start by saying the Grail that I'm going to talk about, and then let me see if I can kind of build the story around it. But, we're obviously here in the new year, 2022. But the big Grail that I picked up for myself in 2021 was I got an Avengers 1. And it was a 2.5 grade, totally fine to me, respectable. But I was happy to get it. And so last year I had started like just sort of a game challenge. I don't know what you want to call it, but like a goal. I noticed that I had been picking up a bunch of Avengers books. I really love the Avengers stuff, the early Silver Age Avengers. And I had decided that I was going to make it my goal to get like 1 through 100. That's going to be my Grail run, just as a challenge. And I also told myself that I only want to get books in person. So I don't want to like buy them off of eBay. I'm not like so set on the rule. I can like, if you guys were selling something on Instagram, I think that that's okay. I just don't want to go like to the main sources, right? So it has to be a little bit of the hunt. So I had been mentioning that in some of my videos and things. And there was actually a comic shop called A1 Comics up in Sacramento. And the guy who works there, one of the guys, his name is Wes, and he had actually hit me up on Instagram and said, hey, we have this Avengers 1. I know you're looking for it. I don't know if this is the one that you want, but we got it here in the store. So we were able to talk about it, and the price was right. For me, it was like kind of what I was looking to spend, kind of what I was looking to get for it. So I pulled the trigger on that one, and because of the fact that the goal for me is like, oh, I want all these books in person. What I actually told him is I said, oh, I'm going to drive up to Sacramento and pick up this book. And you know, for me, it's like my family's in the Bay Area. So I to me, it was more of like, I'm just going to make a weekend trip of it. So I got in my car and drove up from Southern California to Northern California. And I got the book and I made a video about it. And it was like, you know, I'm sure you guys know when you get that Grail, it's always like, it's just such a awesome experience. You know, it's such a great feeling, especially with something that you've really wanted for a long time. And then I was able to like take the book and show it to like my dad. My dad and I grew up like comic book collecting. He doesn't know that I'm like super into it now. He kind of just knows I like comic books. So I was like, you know, able to show it to him, and he had some appreciation for it in the sense that like a person who doesn't really collect comics could know that, oh, it's really old. Yeah. It must be special. So that was the book I was able to get. And yeah, I don't know. That's kind of my story. I don't know if there's no real twists and turns, but what I do think is interesting about it, or at least when I try to think about it, and of all the books and grails that I really wanted to collect, Avengers #1 was the one that I wanted, simply due to like what I think it represents, at least at this moment of time. You know, I think we put in the collecting world, or maybe in the, you know, investing collecting world, we put a lot of emphasis on first appearances and things like that. And I'm not going to win over the market. Like, the market is the market, and I'm not going to convince anyone that Avengers 1 should be more valuable. But to me, when I think about like the brand that is Avengers, like just the name itself, the fact that this is the name Avengers on this book, to me is like, this is even bigger than, you know, first appearance of Thor or Loki or Iron Man and things like that, just because of like what the team represents to this time that we live in with the MCU. So that's kind of why I like it. I don't know if that is ever going to be reflected in the value of the book in the market, you know, 20 years from now when people think of the Avengers. But for me, it felt like this is the book that I want to own, at least.
Man, so a couple of things real quick. I'm gonna jump the gun on you, Jake. So one, I agree with that about the Avengers, but I also think it's really cool from a standpoint of like, you have the inside track, right? Like, people don't know, or people don't feel the same way you do, but it's still a big book, but it's underpriced. Right. In your opinion, right? Like, in your opinion. In my opinion. I don't know like how to price it, how it should be priced, but like in my opinion, I felt like it's worth having. Yeah. So that's also cool because it's such a big book for you, but it's underpriced. So like, you, in your mind, you're thinking I should be paying X dollars, but I'm getting it for X dollars, right? Like, so for less, right? So I think that's a cool thing as well. But the question I had is I think it is cool, and I think you did have a lot of twists and turns, but you drove those twists and turns when you got there, right? So yeah. How long is for somebody that's not from California, doesn't know the California topography or what have you, how long is a drive up there, and why is it a weekend thing? Oh yeah, it's a 5.5 hour drive, so it's not terribly long, but it's just for me, I call it a weekend thing because I was just going to go up there and spend the weekend with my family and stuff. So I kind of made an event of it, out of it, which made it a little more like special in my mind. Yeah. A little bit of a celebration. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, 5.5 hours isn't, I mean, it's a pretty long drive. Yeah. It's a drive where it's like, I mean, maybe to you guys, you're like, yeah, cool. Like, I'd do that. But like, you know, when you tell someone, like when I'm telling my wife, like, hey, I'm going to drive 5.5 hours to pick up this comic book, like, she kind of lovingly rolls her eyes at me, but at the same time, you know, I think comic book collectors can appreciate that. Yeah, I completely understand it. I've got to ask kind of maybe what could have been the scary question. Have you ever had a book you know you wanted, but you had never held it in your hand, and then once you got it, you said, oh, I guess I don't really feel the way I thought I did about this book? Has that ever happened to you? It actually has, I feel like. And I'm trying to think of like what book specifically that has happened. Mine was the first Morbius, just to throw mine out there. It was Morbius. Like, so you wanted that Spider-Man, I really wanted it. It was in my grasp. I had found it at a local shop, and I had said, oh, and I wanted to get it. And then I left, and then I came back like 2 weeks later, and it was still there. And I was just like, it's meant to be. It's still here. So I bought it.
And then I got it home and I was like, this is amazing. And then I was like, it's not that cool. No, it's a great book. I love the cover, which was why I wanted it. And I thought that there was this attachment to it because I remember the character and everything from the Spider-Man TV show as a kid. And I thought that I had this nostalgia for this character in this book. And ultimately, I didn't, right? So I got the book graded. It came back as I thought. Like, it wasn't, everything was in line with when I bought it raw. And I just ended up selling it. And the person who bought it was so thankful and grateful. And they were like, oh my God, I love this book. I've been trying to find it. And I was like, good. The book went to somebody that actually feels the way I wish I would have felt about it.
Yeah.
But what I was wondering, were you worried that you were going to drive all the way to Sacramento to get this book and be like, oh, this book sucks?
It's funny because so in short, in this scenario, I don't think I was worried. Like, I don't think I had those feelings. But I will validate what you felt about the Morbius thing in so much that there's been other books, and I can't think of anyone off the top of my head necessarily, but there's been other books where I thought I wanted it, and then when I saw it, I was like, eh. Like, it just, for whatever reason, that magic, like, price was right. Like, I thought I wanted it, and it just didn't have the, I don't know, whatever it was, like the spiritual connection wasn't there. So in this instance, I wasn't necessarily fearful of that. But I did have the opposite feeling, actually, because I think when I did see it and I got it, I think I felt like, the joy. I felt like elated and stuff. So it was meant to be in this instance.
Where you knew it was a Grail. You knew it was your Grail.
Nice. Yeah, for sure.
I think if you've obviously had that one, feeling that Jake had or has had, that you said you've had it, then obviously when you do get the book in your hands and you get that feeling, then you know it's the right one. So that's pretty cool.
Did you have that? Have you had that feeling, Jesus, where you saw a book and you were like, I don't really want it?
Let me see. I'm trying to think. I can't say off the top of my head I have. I can only say that I've had the feeling the other way, which is, man, this is an awesome book. And it's my Hulk 181. That's that story that I have where I caught it going into a con. A guy was trying to sell it to the dealers. They were lowballing him, and I gave him just more than they were giving him. And this at the time, I didn't know it had a more value stamp. I didn't know any of that stuff. I didn't press and clean it. I just got it signed by Stan and then got it graded. But when I held it in my hands outside of the con, I wasn't even in the con. I just held it in my hands and I was just like, oh man, this is the first appearance of Wolverine. Like this, it's in my hand right now. Like I'm feeling it. I'm touching it. I never thought I would be able to at that time. And I've had that feeling. So I definitely had that feeling. But I can't say off the top of my head I've had that. I haven't had that yet. But I don't buy a lot of big books like that though. Like, yeah, do I? I don't think I buy a lot of big books like that. So maybe I will.
It's a scary feeling. I know that. Well, like when you put some money down on something and then you're just like, I guess not. It's like I don't know what it is. It's like you're trying on shoes, right? And you think you want, I don't know. I've done that with shoes. Oh, I think that shoe's going to be perfect. You try the shoe on and you're like, just doesn't fit, right? It's not it.
Totally. Totally.
This is not my Cinderella or whatever. I don't know, but
Well, that's when you hope that when you got said book, you got it at a good price to where if you really have buyer's remorse, you can move it to someone, like in your instance, Jake, like you can move it to someone who, if you're not coming out on top with it, at least you're kind of breaking even when you move it off to somebody else.
Well, somebody who appreciates it. And the thing it wasn't like a buyer's remorse. Like, I guess whenever I buy a book, I almost always buy a book expecting to keep it in the PC.
Sure.
I'm more of a PC buyer anyway. So when I buy something, I generally will want to collect it in that regard. And this one, I got it and I was just like, all right, off to the PC. No, it's not going to get in there. So I had to move it back over to the sales rack. But either way, I was just concerned, like, you drove all that way. Were you worried about that feeling? But to follow up, you had mentioned you're going for 1 through 100. How far are you into that journey?
So I'm over halfway. I think I'm like, it's 100. So I'm 60% done, around the 60% number. But it's I started, or for me, it was like, I'm going to pull out like, okay, here's all like the really expensive books, like the ones of the run that I really need to worry about. And those are the ones that I've been targeting. So of the 100 books, like, I have almost all the expensive ones except for like First Vision. So yeah. And then a bunch of fillers and stuff. So, like getting Avengers 1 off the checklist and stuff was that's what helped me decide, like, yeah, I'm actually going to finish this thing. Like, I feel like if you buy a bunch of the fillers to start, and then like at some point you get discouraged from buying the big book, then you're probably never going to finish, as opposed to like, let me start off with a bang, Avengers 1 or whatever, and then see if I can fill it out after that.
And so is that a 2022 Grail goal to finish that run?
We'll see. I mean, like, I'm not, I have no expectations of like when it needs to be finished. It was just sort of like, this is something I'm going to go for. And I instituted the rules for myself where it's like, I'm not going to just buy them off of eBay or whatever. So however it ends up, or whenever it ends up finishing, will be what it is. But, I started it for myself at some point at the beginning of last year, and I'm 60% done. So I would assume maybe by the end of 2022 or sometime early 2023, I'll be done with it for sure.
There'll be just one super random book that'll elude you. And it's not even going to be a special first appearance. Yeah. It's going to be just the most ridiculously random cheap book that you just can't find in person. And it's
I think that'll be I think to me when it gets really fun, because I feel like every time if I go to an LCS that say has a lot of back issues, or if I find myself at a con of some kind, I'm going to find the books that I generally need. Whether or not I buy them, I don't know. It's like, I'm still looking for the good deal, on it. Yeah. But I'm kind of excited when I get to that last 5, because like you said, it'll be those ones that are very elusive, and that'll kind of make the hunt fun in that sense.
Nice. Well, you're going to have to keep us up to date on those, or we'll follow up with you and see how that's going at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jake loves to be a stickler and hold people to their,
well, I was hoping he was going to commit to 2022 so that I could hold him to it. But
well, I've already put it out into the YouTube world. So I got people already, they're keeping me honest out there.
Well, that's good. Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move into Jesus's favorite part of the show, the speculation part. It seems like he lives for this segment. I think it's okay. But let's close the show with one spec each, at least one. If you've got a multiple, by all means. But Jesus, I'll let you take it.
All right, man. So I have this is the most different spec that I've done that I have. It's actually pretty interesting, pretty cool, in my opinion. Maybe you'll disagree, but I'm actually going to go with this is slightly for the readers of our podcast, but it's also spec. It's also spec for those that like to spec on stuff. Now, I'm not going to spoil anything for anybody that hasn't seen any of the recent Star Wars Disney Plus shows, so I'm not spoiling it. However, it is slightly based on that. And it's based on upcoming future Star Wars Disney Plus shows. So I'm going to spec on the whole run of Star Wars Volume 2 from 2015. And that is the Jason Aaron run.
Okay.
The reason why I'm specking on it is because one of the characters that recently came out in the Star Wars show on Disney Plus is prominent in this run, along with another character that is already been not rumored, but it's confirmed. The Obi-Wan series is very prevalent in this run. So if there's one, I want to read it, right, to see what it is. So I'm going to be going through it. I might have it as some recent pickups in the near future. But 2, there's a lot of small minor keys in this run of some pretty cool characters, including, villains and heroes. So why not get them right now, whether $8, $4, $10, $12, before the rest of this show comes out and before the next show comes out. So that's what I'm specking out for our readers. Read the Star Wars Volume 2 run from 2015, the Jason Aaron run. And also for you speckers out there, there's some nice low-hanging fruit and some first appearances there.
Very cool. We haven't had a lot of Star Wars spec on the show for a while. I think that Cookie from Just a Little Podcast is going to be very happy to hear that. So
Yeah, Cookie, reach out to me, man, with some of these books that I need to buy.
All right, Swags, what do you got?
All right. I don't know if this is a good one. I don't know if it's ever going to pop off, but so this is one that I've been thinking about a lot. And I notice it being sold for very cheap. Like you can find this in LCSs for less than $5. You can buy it on eBay for $2 or whatever. But
bargain bin. Nice.
I'm gonna nominate Ultimates #2 from 2002. That's the one by Mark Millar.
Okay.
And the significance of that is that it's the first time that Nick Fury is the likeness of Samuel L. Jackson. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that is could be considered the new Nick Fury's first appearance or whatever the case may be. But I kind of always wonder if Sergeant Fury #1 isn't as valuable as some of the other books, because it doesn't feel like when I get that, I got my Samuel L. Jackson fix, Yeah. So I'm just wondering if when Secret Invasion rolls around, if that book ever kind of caught some wind, that could be one that I think is kind of a cool book to own if you are a fan of Nick Fury, at least the MCU version of Nick Fury. So that's kind of one that I throw out for spec. I think it's super cheap still. So
it's super cheap, and I think it's fun, and ultimately that Secret Invasion, I don't know if anybody else has noticed, but it's been really looming in the shadows.
Yeah, I think so too.
Late. And I think that is obviously purposeful by Disney and Marvel, right? They're hiding something back there. Mm-hmm. And when they did that big announcement a couple months back, Secret Invasion wasn't on the list, if I recall.
Yeah, it's a lot of the stuff they haven't quite said when they're coming out, but from what I've been able to kind of parse online is it's supposed to be coming out this year, Secret Invasion. So but I think you're right. I think that there's a lot of interesting stuff that's going to come out of that show, and so my Samuel L. Jackson, Nick Fury one, I feel pretty good about that. I don't know.
No, that's a great one, but two things on that, right? One, I think in No Way Home, didn't they say something that, Nick Fury hasn't been on planets for a year or something like that, right? So that was kind of a little who was he talking to? It wasn't, it was a scroll or what have you. Two, it's coming, so I'm really interested in who they're going to say was a scroll, already that we thought was the actual character, and it's really not the actual character. It's somebody,
Can I throw out a bold prediction right here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Do it.
Okay. Here's my bold prediction. You know how there's rumors that they're going to bring back Chris Evans, Captain America?
Yeah.
I'm just put it out here. I think they're going to bring him back. Everyone's going to think he's Captain America for a long time. And then they will eventually say that he's a Skrull. That's my bold prediction.
Nice. They need the symbol back.
They have to have someone who's a big character. If you want to create the shock, right?
Yeah. Yep.
I feel like that one might make sense, because then they don't ruin what they did with the character, but they get to have him back, so they get to have their cake and eat it too. I don't know.
Yeah, there's almost nobody more shocking than, unless it was Iron Man, maybe the only more shocking character to bring back.
Yeah, and real quick too on that, when is a character in the MCU become the character in the comic books? Right, because I see Nick Fury as Samuel L. Jackson now in my mind, right? So when does that happen? Robert Downey Jr. in some of the comic books, he does look like him, but not the same as the Samuel L. Jackson Nick Fury, right? So at what point do they merge and that's the guy, that's the character now? Because that's interesting. That's a very interesting spec, and I'm gonna be looking into some of these.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I had to look up, because I actually wasn't sure, in current comic books, is Nick Fury still look like Samuel L. Jackson? And then I was able to finally figure out where he is in the continuity, and they still draw him as Samuel L. Jackson. So I'm to me, I'm this is the version now.
Yeah. And a much, I don't know, in my opinion, a much better version. I love this version of Nick Fury. So
Yeah.
All right, cool. I like the bold prediction as well. So all right, I'm going to go ahead and throw mine out. And this is going to be, it's also kind of a recent pickup, although I was already kind of pointed to this book. I had been talking with our pal Newbie and Chris, Vancouver Comic Junkie, about it a little bit. So I want to give them a shout out just to say thanks as well. But this is Submariner 13. I found this for under $20 in my LCS, and this is a very clean, very nice copy. I mean, it needs pressing cleaning a little bit, but overall, I think it's a fairly high grade. I think it could easily get a 7. That said, this is the first appearance of Gargantos. And the reason why I think it's a spec, and there's kind of a two-part to this spec, but Shumagarath, Jesus, you were telling me earlier, we had talked about this. Shumagarath was initially, or they want to use Shumagarath in the new Doctor Strange 2. And even in the trailer, there is a visual that people think is Shumagarath, but there are some licensing or some legal reasons why it is not Shumagarath. It is Gargantos, because they own the rights to Gargantos and not Shumagarath. So it may be by default. However, this book is still super undervalued out in the world. So I recommend looking for it if you are, I don't know, a Doctor Strange 2 fan. But I said this might be a 2-part spec because the early Submariner run, I mean, outside of Submariner number 1, has some of the most epic covers that nobody's collecting right now.
Yeah.
I mean, really, just go through the first 15, 20 books, and the covers are all ridiculously good. And I think that they're undervalued. Like I said, I got this for less than $20, and it's a spec book that's on a lot of people's lists. So
for sure.
And it just hasn't blown up. The Shumagarath book is more expensive than this one. And this is the character that is technically in the show. So that said, I would just say you could spec on the covers alone, the early Submariner stuff. Jesus, you said Silver Age books, all Silver Age books, they have a rocket on their back right now, and they're just ready to light this thing off, and then Silver Age is not coming back, right? It's going to be like the Golden Age.
Yeah, man. I mean, so look, in that run, you got Submariner number 2, which has an awesome Trident cover on it, fighting Submariner, but it's also the first crossover by the Inhumans. Then you got Submariner 5. This has always been an awesome cover to me with the Tiger Shark on there.
Yep.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That
number 8.
That one's number 6 has the second appearance of Tiger Shark on it fighting. Number 7 is that weird one. The one that you said was you have another book like this where it's like a black and white picture on the background.
The cityscape. Submariner with the cityscape behind him.
Which we still haven't done our due diligence to see how many of those they've done. Right, because they have them in a lot of different. I think Daredevil has one too, right?
Yeah, Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. has one.
Yeah. So we need to do the what's it called, research on that. But like Submariner number 8, classic, like you mentioned.
The Thing versus Submariner, yeah.
Yeah, the Thing versus number 9 looks. I mean, there's just a bunch of really cool covers in the early Submariner, man.
Yeah. That one too, Jake, for sure. Like that's one of those books. Not like the Morbius one, but whenever I see that one in person, I'm like so drawn to it.
Yeah.
Like it's cool because it's got Gargantos and all that stuff. And I think you're right. Like if it ends up being Gargantos, then that book should be 4 times more expensive, based on what the Shumagora one sells for.
But the color, right? Like it's a black cover.
I love the black and the green. And then one thing that's cool about this, I think actually I think this whole section of Submariner, there's like a storyline that has to do with the serpent crown. I mean, you see it on the cover, like that snake, that snake crown head thing there.
Yep.
So I think Submariner number 9 is the first appearance of that crown thing, but that's like a storyline, like, say like Infinity Gauntlet, like, or they could do like the Serpent Crown storyline. You'll notice that they use that all throughout all these comic books. Like there was an Avengers 90s run that had like Atlantis attacks, if you guys remember that event. And I feel like they could do something with that too, and that would be a big deal. So I think there's a lot of stuff to mine out of that Submariner run for sure.
Well, when they bring in Atlantis into the MCU, I mean, it's not like they're introducing San Francisco. Like, this, it's going to be a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot, and it seems like, if they're really going to do all this, crazy, they're already going crazy with the Eternals world building. Yeah. So like, I feel like they're going to bring in all of this, deep lore and really explore it.
Yeah. And I hope they do. So that was something that I was kind of blown away that it was available at my local LCS, and then for the price it was, and it wasn't as if I was like, it was there because it had been there for months, probably. I mean, it had been there for a while, because my LCS owner always tells me when he gets new big collections or things like that. And so this was not in a new box or anything like that. It was just sitting in the backstock, basically. So the fact that I found it was pretty incredible. And I wanted to just note that along with this being a really good spec book, or a potentially good spec book, I think that the run Submariner is just undervalued right now. And I wanted to tell people that maybe they should be looking for it. If it was already on your list, maybe jump on it. So that was me. That was my spec. So I think that's going to do it for the episode. Swags, it was amazing to have you on. Did you enjoy yourself? Put you on the spot?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this was a total pleasure, and really, really appreciate you guys, reaching out and having me on the podcast. It was a lot of fun.
No, thank you very much for coming on. Before we sign off, can you just tell everybody specifically where they can find you on the internets?
Sure. I have a YouTube channel where I talk about comic books. You can find that at YouTube. Just maybe search Swagglehaus, which is Swaggle plus Haus. So you can find me there. I try to upload fairly regularly and have, some different type of videos. Maybe we'll talk some spec. Maybe I'll just show some books. But I try to keep, put out as much sort of information as I can, or share my experience of collecting as much as I can, and try to provide some value for people that watch. And I'm also on Instagram, where, usually it's just me posting a picture of the video that I just uploaded, but hey, I'm still on there too. And, I respond to messages, and I'll post a picture of a comic book from time to time. So I'm there as well, Swagglehaus Comics at Instagram, or Instagram at Swagglehaus Comics.
Perfect. Everybody go look him up. And if you need help with that spelling, it's Swagglehaus, Swagglehaus. You can't miss him. He's the only Swagglehaus out there.
That is true.
All right. Well, thanks again for being on. Jesus, we did it again. Episode 26 in the books. Nice work.
Ditto.
All right. Well, that was awkward as hell. Thanks, everybody. Have a good week.